My father had a grapevine on our back fence in our garden in Lower Hutt. Now, Lower Hutt's not really known as a wine-growing region or a grape-growing region, but every year we would have a beautiful crop of grapes. We were not allowed to taste even one grape before they had all been cut and weighed, and the weights had been noted in a notebook to compare the crop with last year and ready for the following year. And then the best grapes were taken to neighbours and friends. My father seemed to have a long list of elderly ladies who he would supply with grapes and vegetables. And then after that, we would go on the visit and take the grapes, and then after that, we were allowed to have a grape from the leftover pile. But they were so sweet and so beautiful. A while ago, I tasted the same variety somewhere, and I was immediately back in the garden. The taste was so distinctive. And I don't remember the pruning process, but I'm sure my father must have pruned diligently every year to get the beautiful crop of grapes that he did. That image of the vine and the vine grower is one that would have been very familiar to the Hebrew people from their scriptures. God is seen as the vine grower in many places, but in particular in Isaiah 5, the God is the vine grower and the people are the vine. And sometimes they grow wild, and sometimes they bear good fruit. But in the passage from the Gospel of John that we've just heard, Jesus becomes the vine and the people are the branches. And the people are to stay connected to the vine, and their job is to bear fruit. And just like real vines, there's always going to need to be some pruning or cleansing, as John the Gospel writer puts it. Now, the translation translates different words, prune and cleanse, but actually in the Greek it's the same word, kathirao. And so prune and clean are the same word. And it's the same word that's used to describe Jesus washing the disciples' feet at the Last Supper. And in John's chronology, this teaching of Jesus about the vine comes after he has washed the disciples' feet and after the sharing of bread and wine at the Last Supper. So think about how John is setting up those images for us in his writing. This teaching is for the inner circle of the disciples, urging them to stay connected to each other and to Jesus, despite what is about to happen. So Jesus has washed their feet, cleansed their feet, to teach them about service. He's shared bread and wine to show them how to remember him. And then he's using the image of the vine to show them how to stay in community and to stay connected. Abide in me as I abide in you, he says, or stay with me. Thomas Boomershine says that the word for abide, meno, is about staying. It's about remaining with Jesus and in Jesus, not leaving, not getting distracted, but staying right there. Of course, by the next day, the disciples are all scattered and hidden, but a few days later, or at least a few weeks later, they will begin to gather and they will take the first tentative steps of forming community and learning what it is going to be to abide together with Jesus. They'll begin to figure out what they need to build that community. What spiritual practices from their Jewish heritage will they keep, like reading the scriptures and praying the Psalms and looking out for the orphan and the widow? And what practices will they let go of? What will they prune? What will they leave behind? The food rules, circumcision, other things as well. And this won't happen overnight. These issues and rules will be debated backwards and forwards for at least a century. 70 years or more will pass before John's Gospel gets written down. And so in a way, this passage describes what's been happening all those years, what's been happening for the community, how they've worked out their life together. By trial and error, they've established a way of being together, of being the followers of the risen one, of gathering, worshipping, caring for each other, working out who they are. Some people will have left, others will have joined. New generations will have been born. And so by the time the second and third generation Christians are growing up, the image of the vine will be key to their understanding of their connection to Jesus and their connection to their community. And they're encouraged to bear fruit. What kind of fruit are their lives going to grow? The letters of John, which emerge from the same community, wrestle more with that question. What kind of life are we to lead then? Is the question. What kind of life are we to lead then? And the letters are an answer. Beloved, let us love one another. If we love one another, God lives in us. Those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. That abide word used again and again. Those who stay in love stay in God, and God stays in them. And this love is not just going to be theory, it's applied. In last week's part of the letter of John, we heard, how does God's love abide in anyone who has the world's goods and sees a brother or sister in need and yet refuses help? It's a pretty clear instruction. And then this week, those who say, I love God, and hate their brother or sister are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they can see cannot love God whom they cannot see. So we're called to love and care for those in front of us if we want to be able to claim to love God. That's the kind of fruit that we bear when we're connected to the vine of love. And this life of community is not there by magic. They have to work at it. And our life of community is not there by magic. We have to work at it. We've got some opportunities coming up in the next few weeks to work on our vine. We have a retreat day next Saturday. We have a group for newer parishioners starting next Sunday. We have our Telling Our Stories series coming back in June. All of these things are designed to strengthen our personal spiritual practices as well as our life in community. And looking beyond the parish, there are other things coming up. There's a sustainability workshop for the diocese coming up. And of course, we continue to support our work with the City Mission and the Religious Diversity Centre. Last night, Stephen and I were privileged to attend an iftar dinner at the Avondale Islamic Centre with the community there, with some other community leaders, celebrating the end of the fast of Ramadan for that day and connecting with people there. And boy, there was a really strong sense of connection there, of community. They didn't use the image of the vine, but I could see it in their community, the way they were connected to each other and the way they were very diligent in their hospitality of us. Everybody greeted us, everybody spoke to us. We were deeply, deeply welcomed. We're going to be extending our vine as well into our digital world. We already have our viewers on live stream and our work on our website. But over the next few months, we're going to be doing much more work in that digital realm. And so we'll be asking the question and exploring, how can we be a community, a vine of connected people across the digital waves? We know how we did that in lockdown, but how do we carry on those connections that we've made and make them even wider and make it not just a viewing experience, but a two-way experience where we really are building a different kind of community? And of course, every day in our individual and family lives, we have opportunities to grow in love, to prune out the other stuff, to cleanse out the other stuff, but to stay connected to the vine and to grow in love. Vines, branches, pruning, abiding, bearing fruit, showing love. Let those images stay with you this week. Let them roll around in your head and your heart, because they're going to return in next week's Gospel as we continue our Easter journey in the life of the Risen One.